You were really looking forward to it, and you can't take off work even for your baby sister. My rarely calling mother said this reproachfully. For a moment, I had no idea what she was talking about. Why didn't you come? You promised since we were kids that you'd be there when I got married. Katie, now on the phone, sounded upset. I was genuinely confused, wondering how to explain. Then Katie, in a softer voice, said something unexpected, and I began to grasp the situation. My name is Michaela. About 5 years ago, I started a business that took off. Despite my hectic schedule, I enjoy living on my own. I'm a 35-year-old single woman. One day, some exciting news came my way.
Michaela, I'm getting married. If I waited for you to tie the knot, I'd be over 30, so I'm going ahead.
One evening, I came home to find Katie. As she shared her engagement news, she teased me. I playfully pinched her cheeks and said, "Congratulations! Don't wait for me. Marry while you have someone willing." Katie laughed brightly, her cheeks still in my grasp. Katie, my sis, is 25, a whole decade younger than me. She's always been a gentle, adorable kid, the opposite of my tomboyish nature. I always thought she'd be happiest as a housewife.
Michaela, you'll come to the wedding, right? Can you take time off?
Seeing her slightly anxious face, I reassured her with a big smile. Of course, no matter what, I'll be there. Just let me know the date in advance so I can adjust my work schedule. Katie nodded happily and hugged me. To celebrate, I decided to take her out for dinner. Seeing her smile throughout the meal made me feel happy too. Our bond was strong. Her happiness was mine. However, the next day I received a call from our seemingly upset mother. "It seems Katie told you first about her engagement." This was news to me, so I replied in surprise. "Really? I had no idea. She seemed so happy, so I took her out to celebrate. We had a bit to drink. Was that wrong?" "No, it's just, I wondered if she had told us first. She always tells you everything first." She added that if we had celebrated at home, Katie wouldn't have to walk home tipsy. I sighed. She wasn't drunk, and she's an adult. You worry too much. Mother didn't share my humor. I apologized. I should have checked with her about telling you guys first. Mother seemed satisfied and hung up. "I'm sorry, I should have asked Katie if she had already told our parents before celebrating," I said. My mother, seeming to finally understand, hung up the phone. In reality, she was my stepmother. When I was 5, my biological mother passed away due to an illness. My dad raised me as a single father until I was 10. But with concerns from those around him about raising a young child alone, he married my stepmother through an arranged marriage. Later, my half-sister Katie was born. I was thrilled to have a little sister. Despite being half-siblings, Katie and I grew up as close as any sisters could be. From a young age, Katie would always follow me around. I loved showing her off, taking her places when it was safe. But my stepmother would always worry excessively, often limiting Katie's activities. This overprotectiveness continued even as Katie grew older. As a result, Katie began to resent our stepmother. Despite wanting to keep Katie close, my stepmother seemed to want to push me away. So I decided to move out before finishing college. But deep down, I believe the reason my stepmother distanced me was because of something my dad once said.
"Michaela looks
just like her mom when she was young. Of course, he said this when my stepmother wasn't around, but I knew she overheard from where she was hiding. When I left home, Katie cried, which probably didn't sit well with our stepmother. Years passed, and I rarely visited home. However, my dad would often visit me, inviting me out for meals or drinks. Ever since your mom passed away, I wonder if things would have been different if I had tried a bit harder on my own, he'd say, always referring to my biological mom as Mama when we were alone. A slightly tipsy dad would always express his regrets and apologize. Stop it! If you hadn't married my stepmother, I wouldn't have met Katie. I left home because I wanted to, not because of you. I'd reassure him, but there was a secret I never shared with my dad or anyone else. It was about the petty cruelties and favoritism from my stepmother. Whether it was cakes, ice creams, or other treats my dad brought home, I rarely got to enjoy them. Even the New Year's money gifts from relatives, which I'd carefully store, would be taken by my stepmother the next day. When I confronted her about it, she'd exclaim, "I'm saving it for you!" But I never saw that savings book, not even when I left home. When I started working part-time in high school, my mom secretly demanded half of my paycheck behind my dad's back. How much do you think your education costs? Hand over your salary. She insisted on this, even though I attended a public high school, which meant no tuition fees. She told me to save the rest, but she never returned the money she took. I never told my dad about her behavior because I didn't want to cause any trouble. I didn't want them to fight and upset my younger sister, Katie. I thought it was best if I just endured it. As Katie grew up, she became closer to me and distant from our overbearing mom. My mom seemed to resent me even more. It's natural for Katie to be close to her sister, Michaela. But she always talks about Michaela. I'm her mother. It's so frustrating. It seemed my mother was jealous because Katie admired my work ethic and relied on me more than her. My mom never recognized Katie as an adult, always treating her like a child. I felt it was no wonder Katie felt distant. My mom also seemed to dislike that my dad would send me gifts or meet up with me. Her jealousy was always directed at me. Time passed, and as Katie was busy with her wedding preparations, I received an invitation.
I finally sent out the invites. Please RSVP and send it back ASAP.
Katie called to tell me this. I had some concerns, but I agreed and hung up, thinking I'd ask later. I later regretted that I didn't ask Katie because I thought she was probably busy, but at the time, I never expected something like that to happen. I mailed my RSVP the next day, waiting for the wedding day. A week before Katie's wedding, while I was at work, I noticed several missed calls from her. The phone just kept ringing. When I answered her next call, she was furious.
Michaela, why didn't you come to my wedding? You promised!
Confused, I tried to find words when my mom took the phone. You chose work over Katie, didn't you? Just admit it! It seemed they believed I had missed Katie's wedding. Coldly, my mom said, So, Katie means that little to you. Got it. I quickly checked the invitation and told Katie. Wait, my invite says the wedding is next week. Katie was shocked.
Why is your invite tampered with? Who did this?
The date on my invite was covered with correction tape. and rewritten with a marker for the following Saturday. I remembered noticing the messy correction, but never thought it was tampered with. Realizing I hadn't intentionally missed her wedding, Katie said in a calmer voice,
Mom's furious. She's talking about cutting ties with you.
I had an epiphany when I heard that. Could the culprit behind the tampering be Mother? I asked Katie, who had seen the invitation before it was sent out.
Well, Dad and Mom saw it. We invited relatives, so we had them check to make sure there were no mistakes.
Upon hearing that, I asked Katie if she had checked the RSVP cards. It turned out that Mother had checked all of them on behalf of the busy Katie. I apologized to Katie for not being able to attend the wedding. Katie, sensing something, emotionally apologized for her anger and promised to visit with a gift after returning from her honeymoon. Just before hanging up, Katie suddenly said,
No matter what happens, I'll never cut ties with you, Michaela. Always be my sis.
I felt like crying, so I laughed it off and ended the call. Katie was apparently leaving for her honeymoon the next day. I decided to settle everything while Katie was away. I tried contacting Dad right away, but couldn't get through, so I waited for a call back. That night, Dad called. He said he confronted Mother, who had helped with the invitations, saying it was impossible for me to skip Katie's wedding. But Mother responded with, "What are you talking about?" and blamed Dad for suspecting her. "She should cut ties with Michaela for skipping such an important family event without notice," she exclaimed. Dad was shocked by Mother's words and actions. I told Dad that if Mother wanted to cut ties, she could. I shared my thoughts. That's Mother's goal, I'm sure. Because of the mysterious tampering with the invitation, I couldn't attend the wedding. If I couldn't prove that, Mother could paint me as a cold woman who chose work over Katie's wedding. And she probably thought she could suggest cutting ties and bury the issue forever. Dad, having heard the situation from Katie, confronted Mother with the same suspicions. But Mother frowned and said, "Katie still calls such an unfeeling person her sis. It's so sad. She still thinks of her as a sis even after being betrayed." Hearing that, Dad frowned even more and said, "I don't know what you're so jealous of Michaela for, but she's my precious daughter too. I thought we shared that sentiment when we got married. Was I wrong?" He seemed to criticize Mother for wanting to cut ties with me so easily. I felt as if their argument was because of me, so I decided to visit my parents' house the next day. I wanted to tell Katie, who had returned from her trip, that everything was resolved and to have a proper talk with Mother to clear the air. I confronted Mother directly. At first she played dumb, but soon after, loud voices from the entrance revealed the truth.
Hey, why isn't the wedding happening?
The voice belonged to Auntie, whom both Mother and I were fond of. She lived in another town. Auntie, Dad's older sister, was upset. When Dad rushed to the entrance after hearing her voice, she exclaimed, "I came all this way and no one was at the venue. The staff told me the wedding was last week. It was so embarrassing." Auntie, limping due to her sore foot, had come to see her beloved niece Katie's big day and demanded an explanation. As we were wondering if Mother had tampered with Auntie's invitation too, Auntie confronted Mother. "This is your handwriting, isn't it? I recognize the way you write numbers. I've been a certified public accountant for years, so I can spot these things." With great force, Auntie compared the overwritten date on the invitation to the numbers in a letter from Mother and thrust it in front of her face. The numbers were indeed distinctively written. Caught red-handed, Mother finally seemed flustered. I'm sorry, sister-in-law. I didn't mean to. Mother admitted to tampering with the date on the invitation. When I wondered why she had deceived even Auntie, Mother suddenly burst into tears. I didn't mean to. Their names were so similar, I accidentally changed the date on sister-in-law's invitation too. Yes, my name is Michaela, and Auntie is Michaela. Quite similar. Realizing that Mother had inadvertently tampered with Auntie's invitation as well, I couldn't help but give a wry smile. However, Auntie was even more furious. So you wanted to make it look like only Michaela skipped Katie's wedding. I see why Katie would be upset with you. Either way, you should understand the sadness Michaela felt for not witnessing Katie's big day. She then demanded Mother apologize to me, which Mother did on the spot. I told Mother what Katie had said to me. I'll continue to be close sisters with Katie. Please don't interfere with our relationship anymore. I also told her I'd cut ties with her. But seeing Mother continuously crying and not lifting her head, I looked at Dad, who had a complicated expression. After that, Dad decided to separate from Mother. Though Mother cried and tried to stop him, he said he couldn't continue living in a house where I couldn't return. Mother, realizing her jealousy had hurt the ones she loved, cried tears of regret. Later, when Katie returned from her honeymoon, she was shocked by the turn of events, but reassured me that she'd occasionally check on Mother. And as for me, I got to spend quality time with my now living alone dad. I resolved to be more devoted to him from then on.